1 cinch. You won't be able to get closer to Ernest Shackelton than here. He lies here in the place that he loved. One rather wonderful thing about our voyage is that, in fact, at the beginning of his endurance trip, he was here in the bay in exactly 100 years ago, in 1914, in November, waiting to decide whether to go into the Weddell Sea. The wise whaling men here said, don't go near it, but he wanted to keep going. He came back here on his final expedition in the ship called the Quest. He was meant to go up to the Canadian Arctic. Government change, he wanted to go up and explore towards the North Pole. That fell through. Many of his old pals with him, McElroy, Macklin, Frank Wild, and others, and Charlie Green, the cook on the Endurance, was mad keen to come. He thought I wanted to go to the Arctic, so he could cook a meal north of the Arctic Circle and south of the Antarctic Circle. Anyway, he had to settle for second best and come back here. On the 4th of January 1922, he went to the bay. Shackleton wrote in his diary, another wonderful day, a beautiful evening. He hadn't kept a diary for too long in that trip south, and later on the 4th, in the evening of the 4th, he wrote, in the darkening twilight, I saw a lone star hover gem-like above the night. Explorer's last words. In the early hours of the morning, 3:30 in the morning of the 5th of January 1922, he had a sudden heart attack, just, I don't know, say behind you, but out in the bay in his ship, the Quest. What to do next? Wild was very upset by this. He was told by Macklin, the doctor, and Wild says, the next day we carried him to the little church, which is situated so romantically at the foot of the towering snow-covered mountains, over ground which he had so often trod with firm, eager steps in making the final preparations for the start of the Endurance expedition in 1914. Here I say goodbye to the boss, a great explorer, a great leader, and a good comrade. By some extraordinary act of perseverance by a lady called Angie Butler, Frank Wild had went into farming and things didn't go too well. Anyway, he died and his ashes was cremated. And in fact, my wife Daphne and I looked for his ashes, and they were found a few years ago. And in 2011, Frank Wild's ashes were brought here to the cemetery. Shackleton's right-hand man. Well, now, I don't know about the right-hand man. Many of you will notice that this grave is orientated north-south. The theory, I suppose, being that Shackleton was, for the last time, facing south. As this is the headstone, maybe he was facing north. So if it was, Wild is on his left hand. Anyway, that's very important. The other members of the trip carried on. Frank lost his bed, and really felt that the expedition, the heart of it, had gone out. Shackleton's body went into the church, and then was brought to Montevideo, where there was a state funeral later in January. There they received advice from Ernest's long-suffering and very supportive wife that she wished him to be buried here. So his body was brought back with just one of the crew members, Frank Hussey, who was the banjo player, not Frank Hussey, Leonard Hussey, the banjo player, and he was buried, came back in here in a blizzard on the 27th of February 1922. There was a service in the church, and he was buried here at the beginning of March 1922. The headstone wasn't erected. I think, as I mentioned, it was unveiled in 1928. It's Scotch granite, chosen by his wife Emily, an inscription is chosen by his wife as well. Well, his wife Emily chose the inscription, but in fact it was written by Shackelton as a sort of would-be poet copying Browning, and it says on the back, "I hold that man should strive to the uttermost for life's set prize." And this was a sort of rewording of one of his favourite poets, Browning. I think that, you know, many people are inspired and will be inspired, I think, for centuries to come by what Shackleton and his men achieved. Shackleton himself said, "The main thing in life is to do what one has to do thoroughly." He reckoned the qualities for a polar explorer were optimism, and that is apply to anything in life, so that becomes so true for many of us as we make our daily lives. Patience, wait for the right moment. Idealism and imagination, the idea of having a vision, and the poetry in his life was extremely important in helping him nurture that vision. And finally, courage to face up to difficulties when they arose, and when you knock down, you get up again, and you keep going. And he said, avoid the temptation of following the rose leaf, the rose petal path. So, just as a tribute to him, I'd just like to make a toast to the boss, and hope you will remember this moment and be inspired by it, visiting Shackleton's grave for the rest of your lives. Here's to the boss. Jameson whiskey. Well, Shackleton drank Jameson whiskey, but anyway, the other whiskey he found under his hut in the other side of Antarctica was McKinley's, but I find it very nice to drink. And unfortunately, this won't be my last toast of the day. So.
Be careful when you're getting the zodiac down.
I know. Well, I do very much encourage you to go and visit the church. It's a lovely church. It's the oldest building still of the same use in South Georgia, and the museum. And if you have time to go up to the cross there, which was put up by Shackleton's men after he died, up on the point there.
What about that cross up there, John?
There are two crosses up there. The lower one was for an officer of the Deutschland, somebody called Filchner, who came down here about 1912, 1914, and went out in a little boat for a spin and back. And the other one was for a group more recently who drowned at sea. And I can't remember the details of that at the moment. So, yeah. Thank you. And you could have had a nicer day for it.